Each and every day, we get to go to work. We have the privilege and honor of creating value for our companies, but not just our companies, for our communities as well. In that same breath, though, that value is eaten away by outside forces. And that's our discussion today. It's our response as an industry to natural disasters. But what if I told you that you could invest $65,000 and get a 300% ROI on that? If that were a sales or a marketing campaign, we would jump all over that. But that's today's discussion. It's more about bolstering defenses rather than that reactionary world. We have a ton of great resources out there in that reactionary realm. FEMA, World Food Kitchen, Red Cross, when all these types of events happen. But when it's the proactive approach, that's where we're going to spend time as the EPC. I want to introduce you to the team behind me. We have Habib Kundajian from Albertsons. We have Marnie Nemkoff from Gelson's. Marco Tricol from Raley's. Brooke Ryan from Dairy Farmers of America. And I'm Anthony Morano from Wakefern Food Corp. You know, the five of us got here about 4 months ago to Southern California. And I got to tell you, we were full of anxiety, as you can imagine, but excitement and a little bit of nervousness at once. But I'll tell you, our perception on that nervousness, anxiety changed drastically within the first couple days when we started seeing images unfold like this. Parts of the Los Angeles County region were engulfed in flames and smoke. We saw some of the most horrific images that this area has seen in a very, very long time. What we did see as well, though, was the community's response. The first responders that did absolutely everything that they could to save lives, buildings, property, everything that they could in the community. And that was really, really incredible to see. You know, evacuation notices happened, and everybody was just chipping in where they could. So this got us thinking. Even the most prepared sector, first responders in this area, were challenged. So what's the parallel in our world? How do we react when these types of events happen? Is this an opportunity to showcase our strengths and our opportunities? We're going to talk about 3 different components today. The first is around natural disasters themselves, both the rise in intensity and frequency and the cost associated with them. Then we're going to talk about our industry itself. What are we doing well? What are some of our opportunities that we could capture on? And lastly, we're going to introduce our solution, the Emergency Pantry Cooperative, a nonprofit communications hub built to fortify and strengthen our response as an industry. You know, back home in New Jersey, where I'm from, just last week alone, we have 15,000 acres on fire. These events are going to keep coming at us. Mother Nature is going to throw everything that she can at us, and it's our responsibility as an industry to work on a plan to be even better than we were before. In our discussions, we had a chance to meet with FMI, California Grocers Association, and in those discussions, we really left with some dynamic conversations. One of the ones that stuck out with us the most was with Ron Fong from California Grocers Association, and he left us with this: we're never as prepared as we think we are. Habib, could you talk to us a little bit about what's going on with natural disasters?
In the last decade, there were over 1,370 federally declared natural disasters across the United States, mostly fires, storms, and floods. And when you see it laid out like this, it becomes very real. And for me, it hit close to home. I live in Altadena, and during the Eden fires, I had to evacuate. Thankfully, my house was okay. But that made me realize how quickly things can escalate and how unprepared most of us really are. This isn't just about natural disasters any longer. It's about staying in business. And it's hitting every part of the states. This is not just going to damage homes, It's going to shut down food access, delay deliveries, and impact every part of the supply chain. So that's why local, flexible, and data-driven analysis is necessary. So the cost of natural disasters keep increasing. Since 2014, we've seen over $1.4 trillion in losses. And just this past year alone, we hit $182 billion in damages. That's nearly double the amount from the prior year. This isn't just about any rare events or incidents. And for the food industry, the impact is very real. Empty shelves, delayed deliveries, and rising costs. This is where the gap becomes clear. FEMA's role is important, but it steps in after the damage is done. The truth is, only half of Americans feel that they're prepared for natural disasters. And when you look at the trends, we're seeing as much as 5 times increase in billion-dollar events nowadays compared to the 1980s. So the threat is real, and it's increasing. And if these disasters are costly and this common, Marnie, aren't we better prepared?
We began our story today with a scenario. You're faced with a wildfire evacuation. But what if, hours later, your store, plant, or warehouse is gone? Unfortunately, that was the reality for us at Gelson's. We lost a beloved store that had been serving our community since 1979 in the recent Palisades fire. But thankfully, and most importantly, all of our employees were evacuated safely. But it begs the question, are we as an industry really ready for the next natural disaster? When we spoke with the Food Marketing Institute, they shared a survey with us that showed 62% of our industry CFOs admit they're not ready for the catastrophic impact to their stores and supply chains when the next disaster hits. So what can we learn from what we're doing today? A perfect example are third-party food safety inspections at our retail stores and manufacturing operations to ensure we're compliant. We can do the same for disaster preparedness. And let's take a page from Walmart. They've built a global emergency management department whose primary function is to constantly collect and analyze data to identify, assess, and respond to events like natural disasters. They pre-stage refrigerated trailers and mobile generators at their stores that are at risk of losing power, and they pre-ship water and other needed supplies to their stores and clubs. The truth is, we simply cannot afford the cost of being unprepared. When we dug into response plans across retailers, CPGs, and suppliers, we found similar gaps, like taking a reactive rather than proactive approach, and not staging emergency equipment like mobile generators at all locations. We can do better, and this is a risk that we can no longer afford to keep taking. And when we wait, we see similar issues, like supply chain disruptions, labor shortages, phones that never ring through to our stores, and trucks that never arrive. A 2023 study showed that after a natural disaster, it takes grocers, on average, 4 days to reopen, 3 days to resume normal business hours, and 2 weeks to get perishables back on shelves. So when our stores stay dark, the costs rise quickly. It can cost us an average of about $50,000 for every day that our store is closed in net profit, plus an additional $50,000 if our insurance deductibles kick in. So let's say our stores are closed for the average 4 days that I just talked about. That can cost us up to $250,000, and that doesn't even include shrink, operating, and other losses that eat into our margins. And let's not forget that when our insurance deductibles kick in, our premiums go up. So what can we do? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can learn from other companies like Walmart to build a more proactive approach together. Let's get ahead of it and not chase it. Because as we've shown you today, it's not a matter of if the next natural disaster will happen, it's when. Marco, can you please let us know how we can keep our shelves stocked and our communities fed after the next disaster?
So as we all know, our industry constantly experiences these unprecedented challenges. Just watching these events unveil right in front of me, it reminded me of my early on career back in Houston, Texas, and experiencing those floods and hurricanes over and over. In this situation, it wasn't much different. Just agriculture suffered, fruit, vegetable, nut farming experienced challenges. Farmers, losses in livestock and damages to their infrastructures. 8 freeway closures, creating significant delays in store fulfillments. And 3 major grocery stores that were shut down created a shift in consumers' demand, which all ultimately transitioned into national delays for weeks to come. The question is, how do we bridge these gaps? So imagine a unified response model that's designed specifically around building resilience within our industry. A model that starts with collaborating, where members meet annually and we ingest your current practices and your current capabilities and come up with best-in-class practices that are designed specifically for your organizations. Then we come into your organization and we train your team. We train your leadership team as well as your stakeholders on how to react within those situations. And then followed by sustaining those processes by auditing once a year, making sure things in place, assuring you as a leader that you are best prepared to your best capabilities. We also envision a communication network where we can help each other with product supply and logistical needs for the time being. And all of this is designed specifically to not only serve in our stores and our communities through business continuity. And how do we get there? Well, first, we foresee a board of directors, a volunteer board of directors, as well as a team of folks that would manage the day-to-day operations. We will also look into AI technologies that will create seamless, real-time communication, enabling each one of our members to communicate with each other. We will also dip into future technologies such as quantum computing, in which you will hear about later on today, to help us set more realistic recovery plans. And lastly, we will leverage strategic partnerships with legislative leaders, as well as industry experts such as yourself, to deploy urgent resources. Now, Brooke, can you give us the ROI on that?
So when we started to dive into the numbers on a project like the Emergency Pantry Cooperative, we were very surprised at how little of an investment goes such a long way. We would start with a 3-tiered structure, which would just start in the state of California and take a screenshot of the businesses starting from the size of their business unit or their division. The most the largest business or division would pay is $65,000 per year. So for example, we'll take Albertson SoCal. With over 300 locations, this business unit would only pay $65,000 in order to ensure that they're prepared for the next natural disaster if or when it were to hit. It goes down from there. Below the tiers, we're looking at a $35,000 investment for anything less than 99 stores, and only a $15,000 annual investment for any business unit or division that has less than 25 stores. This would take, for the first year, roughly 30 businesses of being members of the Emergency Pantry Cooperative that would raise $1.2 million. And when we look at what that $1.2 million would go towards, it would be dedicated towards a staff of 5 who are experienced in emergency management response. They would have benefits, and that would also go towards maintaining technology that helps and assists in communication during times of need, maintaining an office space, and other administrative fees and traveling in order to assist and audit your locations. When we look at the ROI on this, it's really a cost avoidance. As Marnie said earlier today, it could cost your business $250,000 for one natural disaster event per year. What if you have more natural disasters per year? At the bare minimum, you're looking at $185,000 ROI, if not more, by investing in the Emergency Pantry Cooperative. In addition to membership fees to help fund the Emergency Pantry Cooperative, we would also look at applying for grants through the state of California and through the federal government. Often these grants are used in a reactive approach to help when natural disasters hit in order to help communities that are hit the hardest. However, we would apply these grants in a proactive approach to be able to help with mitigation projects, infrastructure reinforcement, and communication technologies to reinforce your businesses and ensure that they're ready and your associates are trained to react at the drop of a hat. Because this initiative is a nonprofit, you would also be able to apply for your membership fees would be tax deductible. When we start to look into natural disasters, I started thinking back on my time in New York, growing up in central New York. In 2012, Hurricane Sandy absolutely devastated the East Coast. And what struck me and my community the hardest was the dairy farmers in the Catskill Mountains. However, what was so reassuring about the response to that is the amount of farmers from across the state who weren't impacted, but were still jumping in to help to ensure that the impacts of the hurricane weren't as significant as they had to be. Farmers dedicated things like labor, generators, animal feed, and other necessary resources to ensure that their animals were taken care of, that they still had business continuity, and that their communities received the necessary nutrition when they were hit the hardest. Looking at the Emergency Pantry Cooperative, we're looking to emulate this and take it to the next level. We're looking to be able to build out a 24-hour crisis communication hotline that you can access at any time. You'll have access to training for your employees to be able to lead when or if the time comes during a natural disaster. And you will also have audits to be able to help you prepare ahead of time so that you don't have to be impacted the way that you might be today. We are looking to start in the state of California with this initiative. We'll partner with organizations like the California Grocers Association, where we'll start supporting some of the nation's most impacted food industry businesses that we see today. Up next, we'll expand our operations out to the Western United States, partnering with organizations like the WAFC to build upon our industry supply chain and fortify our response to our communities. And finally, in 5 years, we'll expand the Emergency Pantry Cooperative nationwide, working with organizations like FMI to be able to support our communities and our employees when they need it most. We're building out a blueprint for resilience. What we ask of you now is to take this first step. Upon scanning the QR code on the screen, you'll find that you'll be taken to a natural disaster preparedness assessment. This assessment allows you to understand how well you're prepared and able to respond to a natural disaster today. If upon taking the assessment, you find that you're not as well prepared as you would like to be or should be, take the next step. Join the Emergency Pantry Cooperative by July 31st of this year. We'll start in the state of California on January of 2026 to be able to fortify our supply chain and support our industry. We know natural disasters are on the rise, and we know that there are some within our industry that do a good job of preparing and responding to them. However, we have the opportunity to gather as an entire industry to be able to support our communities and our consumers. As Mike Steigers, professor of our FIM class and president of Wakefern said, the cost of not preparing for a natural disaster when you should have far outweighs the cost of preparing and not needing it. Take this next step and join the Emergency Pantry Cooperative to support our industry and your consumers. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
No questions?
Oh, a question back there.
Great job, you guys. So would you look at it in an area, let's take the fires that we had this past year, would you look at trying to keep all retailers are open, or would you strategically look at trying to keep certain stores open to serve the neighborhood? Thanks.
So Anthony, I think, can answer that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I think for us, it's keeping as many open as possible, right? Because when one goes down, then that bleeds into other regions. So the whole goal behind this program is to make sure that everybody is prepared as possible. Some that haven't staged generators before, some that don't have the strength in the plans that they've had before. The idea is to keep that region as solidified as possible. There's a lot of reactionary work that happens between FEMA, the Red Cross, and World Food Kitchen. And that's great, but there's a lot of consumers out there that want to go into their own store and to like that beacon of hope for them. So the goal is to keep everybody open as best as possible.
Great presentation, guys. So thinking about the logistics of this, is the main goal of the organization to prepare individual companies ahead of time? Or is there some logistics side of this when the fire hits and the stores are destroyed that go into immediate action from the organization?
So really, it's both. The main objective is to be able to help organizations prepare so that they can do everything possible to avoid being down, whether you're a supplier, a manufacturer, or a retailer. The goal is to stay up and running, but of course we know that it's not always possible. So if disaster does strike and you're down for 12 hours, we would also help with a communication hub standpoint to coordinate logistics and resources to get to your store to lessen the impact of it. So the focus is on preparedness, but it also does serve in the reactiveness in worst case scenario.
Great job. Thanks so much for the information. I'm curious, as you talk to and researched and these other agencies, do you see a path to collaboration to make this more effective, or do you see that this organization would have to take the lead when it came to food in disaster preparedness?
Barney, I'll give you that question.
Sure. So we did speak with CGA, with FMI. They both expressed interest in partnering with us. I don't want to speak for Ron Fong, but he went as far to say, like, we need you. So we would definitely partner with them to build a stronger core. And even with local governments. We met with the city of Los Angeles, their emergency department. The woman that we spoke with even indicated that she needs something like this in place. And it's very topical and relevant. So absolutely, we would partner with as many local and national organizations as we can just to build a stronger, more resilient partnership and cooperative.
Hi, I'm not from the industry, and I'm taken back by the low price to play. So can you explain the $15,000 to $60,000 per participant, what the logic was behind that investment and not something a lot more significant?
Sure, so I can take that. So our logic behind that is, in theory, you don't want to have to pay so much for something that you might not ever see the benefit from. But we also realize that because this is a nonprofit, we're not in the business of making money. We're here to help you, and if your benefit exceeds the cost, that's a different story. But with large organizations that have, and I keep going back to Albertson, SoCal, but they have 300 locations across the Southern California division. Realistically, their emergency preparedness is probably going to be very similar across different locations. So there's uniformity and standardization, but whenever there is an emergency response and it differs between the two locations, we're willing to help out with that. Now, we are also offering that if a location or a business would like to have additional audits and additional assistance, they can pay for that additional services, and we would come out and help them with auditing and preparedness. But the base price is just $65,000 a year.